My name is Mê-Linh Lê, and I will be doing the fifth part of our systematic and scoping review workshop series, which is focused on the use of AI in systematic and scoping reviews, but really it's how to use it kind of in any larger scale review project. So before I begin, I do want to acknowledge the land where I am today and where this presentation was created. So the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, the Ininiwak, the Anisiinawak, the Dakota Oyate and Dene, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. I respect the treaties that were made on these territories. I acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and I dedicate myself to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So just to kind of reiterate as we move into the final session of the workshop today. So we've kind of gone through the whole process. You can see all of them listed here. The slides and recordings for all of the previous sessions are available on our website in case you missed one, or there was something you just didn't have a chance to click through at the time. They're all available there. And the slides for today's session are also there. And Janice will be posting them in the chat. They can be good to follow along today. In particular, I'll be doing kind of a lot of clicking through to external resources. So being able to do that yourself might be helpful for you. Okay, so again, the use of AI in systematic and scoping reviews. So the outline for today is listed here. And for anyone who may have seen in past years, we had a sort of similar one last year, but I've really kind of revamped and updated all of the content. So it has a similar title, but completely new content from last year. So all that to say is I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm aiming for an hour, but we really will see as we go through. It might be less. So today we're going to talk about the objectives, an introduction to kind of tools, so kind of setting the stage for what I'm going to be discussing today. And then bringing it back to what we looked at in the very first session, which was the 9 stages of a review, and then really taking some time to look at some of the different tools out there, and I'll share my experiences working with them. And then I have a lot of additional references and resources for you to explore on your own as well. So in terms of housekeeping for today's session, please keep yourself muted and video off for recording. And my colleague, obviously Janice Linton, who has taught some of these sessions, is online and can answer questions via chat. We recognize we've had some technical issues. So if you're having technical issues, my colleague Sarah Clark is also on the call. She'll be here for the first little while. So if you have any technical issues or if any of your colleagues have been having trouble getting in, she is the best person to reach out to over Zoom or over email. And her contact was in an email I sent out earlier in the week. So again, just to remind people that if you are on the Bannatyne campus and you are thinking about doing a review, that there are some resources available for you. So I've listed the health sciences librarians here, as well as a QR code to make an appointment with any of us. On the right-hand side, I have listed some helpful links, specifically our kind of main page for systematic review support, or kind of figuring out, well, who is the librarian for your specific discipline? So we have liaison librarians for every department and discipline in the university, and kind of knowing who to reach out to if you have questions. If you are on the Fort Garry campus, you also have a librarian who can help you if you have questions. So I've linked out to the subject page where you can look at who the librarian is for each department or each subject in the university and book an appointment with them or email them. And I've also linked out to the webpage for systematic reviews in the sciences. So what we've always aimed for with these sessions is to make it broadly applicable to different disciplines and departments. We recognize, Janice and I are health science librarians, and sometimes it's hard to kind of remove ourselves from that world, but we do have a guide if you're doing reviews in the sciences. And this session in particular, I think, is the most kind of broadly applicable to all departments, in that what I talk about is it doesn't matter what area you are coming from. There's different tools to support you. So those are some helpful links. And then the experience record. So if you registered and attended all 5 sessions and you are a graduate student here at the University of Manitoba, you are eligible for a credit on your experience record. I did send out an email, earlier this week about sessions 2, 3, and 4, as we did have some technical issues. If you have other questions, you can feel free to contact general questions about experience record. You can use that email there. Also, I will be sending an email out after this session. We've done some kind of discussions on our end about what this is going to look like. And there will be an update on experience record for those of you attending the session. So more to come on that. I just haven't been able to kind of get that together as I was prepping the class for today. Okay, I think I've said this enough time. That's where the workshop content is there. And I'll also be sending everything out by email kind of in one summary session for all attendees and registrants. Okay, so the objectives for the class today. What do I hope to accomplish? So 3 kind of seemingly straightforward objectives. I want you to be able to hopefully describe how AI can be used in systematic and scoping reviews, to identify some tools that can be helpful for different tasks, or at least know where you can go to help identify those tools. And then also to be able to think about what are some kind of potential problems or challenges that you might encounter using AI tools to complete reviews. So it's not, suddenly that these tools are going to make everything super easy and simple and straightforward, but you really have to understand kind of more deeply about how the review process works, which I think is what we've been working towards over the last couple of weeks, and then how these tools in particular can help streamline different parts of the process. So throughout the session today, what I am going to be using is this kind of research question. And in almost all cases, I think I use this. There might be 1 or 2 where I use a different question, but I'm interested in looking at the impact of regular short form video consumption. So that an example of that is, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and its impact on anxiety, depression, self-esteem, and overall mental well-being among adolescents and young adults. So this is kind of the general topic that I am going to be interested in, and that we're going to see how AI tools can help kind of look at this more closely. So before we begin, before we can dive into the tools, we have to set the stage a little bit. So sometimes even the title of the presentation, I was a little kind of hesitant to just say AI, because I think a lot of people maybe think just generative AI, but there is a whole kind of suite of different AI products, many of which fall outside of generative AI and are more related to machine learning and text mining. So kind of thinking about this much more broadly than, just say ChatGPT. So in terms of these tools, before we get into kind of any of that, I want to emphasize some very important kind of takeaways. And I hope you are beginning to recognize that reviews and kind of all different types of knowledge synthesis products are incredibly complex. And they are, their own research methodology. And to do them well, you require a solid understanding of the kind of the foundational understanding of how they work and how different experts kind of plug into different parts of them. So these tools do not take the place of that knowledge, of your content knowledge, of your methodological knowledge, or your expertise. But what they do is they help people who do systematic reviews to work a little bit more efficiently. So for example, my role in systematic reviews is typically very much focused on search strategy development and running that search. So when I use these tools, they are not taking the place of my kind of years of knowledge and expertise in building searches, but they're helping me streamline or make things run a little bit faster. And there are a lot of tools out there. I will show you a list where you can kind of see everything out there. The ones that I talk about a little bit more closely today are ones that I have used or can kind of recommend, or that are talked about most in the literature as being helpful. And just in terms of the number of tools out there, one estimate that was a study, it was done, I think, in 2024, listed 160 different tools that can help with different parts of the review process. And then a more recent one, I think from 2025, listed 235 tools. So we are just talking about a very small subsection of those tools. So know that there's kind of a lot out there. And this is a quote just that I liked from one of the papers that came out in 2023, specifically talking about large language models like ChatGPT and how it was going to impact the systematic review process. And they really emphasize that if you are a non-content expert using these tools, you really have to have a lot of caution. And without that content expertise, it can be very difficult to know how well the tools are working, and that there's a lot of oversight that is still needed kind of in every step of the process. Okay, so some additional things about kind of AI, which encompasses machine learning and automation. And really, the use of AI for reviews is nothing new. It was first proposed in 2006 to kind of help with the screening and selection process using a lot of using text mining. So what it can do, what these tools can do, right? So it can't do everything. It does not replace human content expertise, but it can help streamline the process. It saves some time and effort along the way. It can potentially help mitigate bias. And I know people will say, oh, well, there's also a lot of bias in these programs. And yes, I'm not discounting that, but there are other ways that using this can help different streams, basically, where it can mitigate bias that happens during the review process. And what it can do, particularly with larger reviews, is it can help kind of identify patterns or connections that we might have trouble seeing. Our brains are not built that way to see connections between, say, dozens or hundreds or thousands of papers, right? But can these tools help us see things on a much broader scale? But with that, you always want to carefully evaluate any outputs from using these tools. Again, it is not you put something in and you accept it no matter what. You are still looking closely at what is being created or what these tools are kind of telling you about the data. But what I have found is it really helps minimize repetitive tasks. So anyone that has already done a review, or if you've paid close attention to what Janice and I have been talking about over the last couple of weeks, you recognize that reviews can take a really long time and that there is a lot of repetition that is built into the review process. And some of that repetition is there for a reason. And some of it is just the way that they are designed, and in order to be to be done well, they're just there. So AI can really help to minimize some of those tasks that are time consuming, but don't necessarily require a lot of deep thinking or deep knowledge. And as we'll see, there are different steps in a review, right? And some of them are much better suited to assistance from AI tools than others. So what you'll see is that some of the steps of the process, we have lots of tools out there that can help, and others, they're kind of in development, and others where it's just based on the task at hand. There aren't really any tools that can help, are really well suited to it, essentially. And through all of these, especially if you're using large language models like ChatGPT, is that one of the key parts of a review process is that it can be reproduced, right? That is why kind of everything that goes into creating a review is often published. So the searches, all of the articles that were included or excluded are kept somewhere. And so reproducibility is an issue. And so it calls into question some of these kind of, again, these key tenets of a systematic review about reproducibility. Well, if you use some large language models for some of these tasks, how could any other research team reproduce it? So that's something to always keep in the back of your mind when you're using these tools and which tasks you're using them for. Okay, so I know that this graphic is a lot, but I wanted to just show you kind of a visual representation of how many different tools that are out there. So this is from a scoping review that was done in 2022 that identified machine learning tools to help in the systematic review process. And the ones listed here are software tools that can assist in the process. So you can see what they've done in this graph or in this image is to have different parts of the review process kind of here in the middle. So, writing the protocol, extracting data, combining data, that kind of thing. And then using this, they have identified different tools that are out there. So if you, for example, are looking at data extraction, here are just an assortment of different tools that have been released that are out there to help in the process. So it gives you just an idea of how much is out there, and again, this is 2022, so things have changed a lot in this time, but I still find this one of the most helpful graphics to kind of assist me in thinking about what is out there and even knowing kind of where to look. So these are software tools. This is the same study, but here now they have identified machine learning tools to help in the systematic review process. So the machine learning tools fall kind of more neatly under the AI heading. So again, these same parts of a review here in the middle, and then pulling out to point to different tools that can help, with, like, let's say the search, or with data extraction, critical appraisal, updates, that kind of thing. So this is a great article to go look at a little bit more closely if you want to see some of these tools listed and kind of get an idea of what's out there. So that was software tools, the first graph or the first image. This is machine learning tools. And the third one here is related to large language models. So what's happening kind of here, it's similar to what was happening in the last image, but just in a different graph form. So this one's a pie chart, but they have the different parts of a review kind of in the inner part of the donut. So searching, screening, extraction. And then on the outer part of the donut, they are pointing to different large language models like ChatGPT or Claude that have been used to help in that process. So you can see that certain parts of the process, for example, have more, it was a scoping review, pardon me, have more articles that have been done on how they can help. So there have been more articles, for example, that look at using ChatGPT for searching to streamline the searching process. Some for more for screening, more for data extraction, fewer for, say, looking at interpretation of data. Okay, so those are the different, kind of an introduction to the different tools that are out there. And now I just want to bring you back to the steps of a review. So I first shared this in the very first session when we talked about the stages of a review. And so what I'm going to do now for the rest of the session today is go through different parts of the review process and suggest some different tools out there that might be able to help, or that you might want to take a closer look at. And a reminder, some of these are, a lot of the tools that we talk about might be able to inform different parts of the review process, but I have split it into the 9 stages. But again, multiple tools help for multiple parts of the review process. And in terms of a very helpful resource for you to consider is the Systematic Review Toolbox. So this, I'm going to link out to it here. Is a great resource that lists all of these, or many of these different tools that are out there to help, and gives you information. You can kind of search based on what part of the review process you want help with. So I always go to the advanced search unless I have a particular tool that I already know about. And then what you can do is you can indicate, do you want guidance on a tool, or do you want specific software recommendations? And then you can pick what review type you are doing. So if you are if you're doing a qualitative or a mixed method or systematic scoping, you can indicate which type you're doing. So let's say I pick systematic and I'm going to pick scoping. And then you can indicate what part of the review stage you want to see tools on. So I'm going to choose, for example, data extraction, and then hit search. And then what they're going to do, they're going to show you how many results you have. They're going to show you the name of each kind of tool that is out there and what it kind of does. And then it'll show you as well what specific stages it is helpful for. So one that you'll see me talk about a couple of times today is called Distiller SR. It's a pretty well-known one. It's been around for a while. It is helpful for many of the stages of the review process, for many different types of reviews, qualitative, quantitative, mixed, etc. And then a link out to the resource. So really, this is, I would say, one of the most helpful ones. It can be really hard to keep track of everything that's out there. So I like this one to kind of keep things organized and for me to go back to. Okay, so that's me setting everything up. So now let us go look at some of the tools and how I've used them, and yeah, just kind of get started. So the first step is developing your research question. So right now, probably your best bet for an AI tool to help you as you start thinking more deeply about your research question or your topic of interest are these large language models. And I've listed a few of the most common ones to think about. So ChatGPT, down on the bottom, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, they're all listed here. And how I use them really is brainstorming. So if I see it as, if you're a grad student, you're talking to someone else in your lab or someone else who's in the same year as you, and you're kind of just like bouncing ideas back and forth and really exploring a topic, or even how you might talk to an advisor on a topic. So you're really trying to get kind of drilled down to what you are really interested in and learning more about them. So everything from here, though, you have to go and read and explore more on your own, but they're jumping off points. So I've shown an example here of kind of some very basic conversations I had with Claude. And so let me make it a bit bigger here. Okay. So I don't know if you've never used Claude or Claude, I guess. I don't know. I call it Claude, but maybe people call it Claude. Anyways, so what I put in on the top is just to say I am doing some research related to the impact of TikTok on kids. So that's what I want to know more about. And then I say, what should I consider about this topic? So that's the prompt that I have put in. And then what it's going to do is it's going to, again, this is a very simplistic prompt, but it's just going to give me some different things that I might want to think about if I'm interested in this topic. So you can see it talks about some developmental and psychological effects, content exposure concerns, screen time and addiction, privacy and safety considerations, and then benefits as well of these kinds of tools. And then it talks about, well, if you're doing methodology, here are some different methods you might want to consider if you want to look more deeply at this topic. So then what I say is, okay, I think I want to focus more on mental health. So what I'm doing is I'm reading through this, I'm thinking about it, and then I say, okay, I want to talk about mental health. And so here is then it's going to talk to me a little bit about different parts of mental health that might be affected by watching short form videos. So maybe you get depressed or have anxiety, the body image problems, it's interrupting sleep, impacting attention, social validation. So different things, again, to think about, all related to mental health. And then it asks me some questions too. So here now it asks, okay, do you want a specific age range, or are you looking at a particular mental health outcome? And so I say, okay, I'm going to focus on adolescents and young adults. So again, it gives me a bit more information that I can read, things I can think about, all the different things. And even for methodology, if there are specific measurable tools that I want to use to assess mental health, that kind of thing. And then I ask, okay, has there been a lot of literature on this topic already? And now you can't quite see it, but what it is doing at these ones is now it is linking to doing a web search at the same time. And it is linking out to PubMed articles, to other journal articles, that kind of thing, to talk about this. And it kind of gives me a summary on the state of the literature in the moment, if there are research gaps and opportunities, and where I might be able to find a research opportunity. And it ends by saying the field is ripe for quality research. There's enough existing work to build on, but plenty of room for novel contributions, especially if you incorporate stronger methodology or focus on understudied aspects. So it's not like I would use this and put this into a research proposal. But again, this is how I would start to get familiar with a new topic area. And from this, you can then go off and do lots of different reading and diving into different parts of your research question to determine whether you really do want to look more closely at this question. And you can always go back and ask more questions to find out more, to link out to other resources, and just get more immersed in your topic. And yeah, it's sort of like a conversation, right? Nothing, you don't trust everything that it says outright at all, but it will point you into places where you can go and do more analysis and more thinking. So that's how I would use a large language model to kind of help me develop my research question. And I've put just screenshots of what I just showed here, sometimes just in case it wasn't working. So that's all that is showing. So that's step one. Okay, step two, how do you assemble your team? So when you're getting every year, okay, you decided this is the topic I want to work on. Where can I get help to manage and organize this large scale research project? And so there isn't, I would say, a specific AI tool per se that helps with this, but there are online software tools that can help you organize your project and kind of ensure that everyone is on the same page in terms of timelines and tasks and who's responsible for what, that kind of thing. So I've listed, again, a few on the bottom. In particular, I use Trello for project management.
Mê-Linh.
Oh, yes.
I just want to say we're still looking at the website.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we haven't jumped back to the slides.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I think you can see it now. Thanks for that reminder, Janice. Okay, so here's what I was saying. Yeah, so I've linked out to a few, Trello, Planner, some of which are free. Trello and MS Planner are free. Covidence, we have an institutional license, so you can use that for free. JBI Summary is a paid resource, but maybe depending on the team that you're working on, that's something you want to invest in. And I've also linked out to a tool called Airtable, or I haven't linked out to the tool. I've linked out to a page that walks you through how you can use this product called Airtable if you are doing systematic reviews or any large scale review, and to help you kind of track parts of the project as you go. So again, this one, you can kind of explore what's out there. No perfect tool, but project management tools, and more of these tools incorporate kind of aspects of AI into how they work. And you'll notice that on the website kind of for all of them. They're just trying to automate things and make things a little bit more straightforward. So the next one is writing your protocol. So you've got your topic, you've thought about it, you've got your team assembled, who is going to help you kind of with the project. So when you get to writing your protocol, again, a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini can be really helpful for brainstorming. So again, thinking about, well, if I was to do this topic, what kind of potential inclusion or exclusion criteria might I want to use? So maybe you want to drill down into, well, how long are they watching the videos for? What are the age groups? What specific mental health criteria am I interested in? Those kinds of things. You can really prompt these large language models to kind of find out different things. And another thing that also you typically do when you're writing your protocol is you are identifying seed articles. So I think Janice and I have both talked about this, maybe Janice more than I have, but those are articles that you want your review to find that perfectly meet your kind of search criteria and your inclusion criteria, and that you want to include. And so what I would recommend, if you haven't looked already, is the U of M library launched its own AI research assistant maybe a month ago. you do have to be affiliated with the U of M to use it. You have to log in each time to use it. But what it's doing is it is a large language model, but it is tied to our university library resources. So it doesn't have kind of the same hallucination problems that you might have in another tool. So what you can do is, again, you can ask it the same question. So I'll just show you mine. And it always scrolls to the bottom. So here's me asking again, within the U of M library system, what is the impact of short form video consumption, et cetera, et cetera. And what it's doing is it's linking out to 5 articles right here on the top. It's giving me an overview of the topic, and it's linking out to the references where it got that information. So from that, all of these, I could then go through and read these articles to help me develop my protocol, to help me know what I want to include for my inclusion and exclusion criteria, what outcomes I'm looking for, all that kind of stuff. And then you can also, again, refine your search. So initially it didn't seem to focus as much on short form videos, which is what I'm interested in. So I can prompt it to focus more on that. And then I can prompt it to focus more on mental health and so on and so forth. And it will give you some suggestions for different ways you might want to take it. But again, it can be helpful when you're writing your protocol, excuse me, to identify some of those articles. The other one, oh, sorry, I have a very sensitive mouse. Let me go back here. Okay. The other suite of tools that I always highly recommend, they don't necessarily have AI as we maybe think of it built into it, but they have some kind of, again, text mining and machine learning built into it. So it used to be called the Systematic Review Accelerator. It is now called Terra Tools. And you do have to create a free account to use it. But what they have, and I had logged in before I started teaching, is they have this whole array of different tools that help out in, I would say, almost every step of the systematic review process. So I'm just going to, because we're talking about the protocol, I'm going to focus on this one right here, which is called Review Video. And actually, I already created one. Let me go back up to it here. But this is the Review Wizard. So what you do is, let me just go into it. Oh, hold on. Oh, no, sorry, I have to go here. Okay. So what you do basically is it's almost like sort of like a very advanced cut and paste. So they ask you to identify, say in the title page, you put in the title of your study, you put in what year you want to publish, you can fill in, well, who are the authors on your study, who's on your team, and then you would put in things like related to the review. If you've ever looked at a protocol, you have to put the different tasks, whether you've accomplished them or not. And then it gets you to describe your research project and then identify what kind of different parts of, say, a PICO or a PCC you're going to look at. And then it walks you through, again, creating your protocol. So it gets you to identify, okay, what's your inclusion and exclusion criteria? What kind of outcomes and settings are you looking for? What kind of study types are you looking for? And you can see in this kind of middle column, all of the different things that it's asking you that are related to protocol development. So how are you going to build your search? How are you going to screen? How are you going to, do subgroup analysis, et cetera, et cetera? How are you going to report on things? And then what it is building towards, let me scroll down a little bit, is an output with standardized language. And it inputs your answers into this standardized kind of template. You can see some of it is left blank. You can edit it at any time or go in and add more information. But if anyone who's read multiple protocols knows that a lot of time the language is exactly the same, what changes is your topic and your kind of specificity of your topic and your question. And what you do is it just kind of pre-fills that in as you think it. And it really prompts you so you know what you want to be thinking about when you are writing your protocol. So again, this can be very helpful. I'm not going to go through all of the different tools that are here in Terra, except for Polyglot, but it is really a really helpful whole suite of resources. Okay, so then I've just included some screenshots as well here, just on using the AI research assistant from the library and how Terra works to develop your protocol. Okay, so the next stage to think about is how do you perform a systematic search? So the way that I use these tools, and in most cases, I'm talking about large language models. So I use it again for brainstorming. So I work on a lot of different reviews. I don't have content expertise in any of them. I bring my own methodological expertise to it, but I don't know when I come into a new topic, kind of getting familiar with it. And so you can see here how I have used it when I'm brainstorming. And it always does this when you share links, it puts it down on the bottom. So I have to scroll up really fast to show you the top. So here is how I've used it. So what I've asked it at the very top, so I'm brainstorming. I'm trying to come up with different terms that I'm going to use when I'm searching the literature. So I've asked it, okay, what are popular short form video sites? And it lists kind of the big ones that maybe you and I might be familiar with. TikTok, Snapchat, Spotlight, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, depending. Some of these I had not heard of, but again, what's popular out there that you might not know about. So it lists some of them here. And then I ask, and again, I'm prompting, I am refining, I'm encouraging it to do more. So then I ask, okay, well, are there other short form video platforms to be aware of that are popular in other countries? And then it goes, well, yes, thanks for asking. Basically, here are a whole bunch of other short form videos and that are available from different countries, and it indicates which countries they are popular in. So again, I'm not saying that you need to use all of these, but it might help you to think about, well, are you only going to focus on the big ones that are popular in North America, or are you really trying to find everything that has been published, especially in other markets? Because for example, short form videos are very popular, say, in China and India. So you want to make sure that you capture their short form video platforms as well. So you can kind of go through this list, explore them, dig a little deeper. It also indicates some niche or emerging platforms that are out there, and specialized platforms based on country or continents. And then what I say, okay, so I would have to clean this up a little bit, but this is related to building a search and what's called syntax, right? Which Janice talked about. What I did here is I say, okay, make a list of all of those short form videos, put them into alphabetical order, put an asterisk at the end of each term, and put an or in between each product. So you can see it's not perfect, but what it has created for me here, you can see some of them have multiple asterisks as opposed to just one. It has put all of the video platforms it talks about just as I asked it. This, you could then do a search for it. So depending on what your area of interest is, I've done this for drug names. I do a lot of drug searches. So thinking of what are all the different brand and generic names that are out there for certain drugs, the lists are very long. So this can be really helpful to think about that. And yeah, you could then paste that into a database to search for articles. You would need to add other stuff, but it can really help you, again, not have to do this manually. Another way that I like to use large language models for systematic searches is, again, exploring what's out there. So what I've done in this question is looking at the other part of my topic. So I asked, what are different measures that can be used to assess anxiety, depression, and mental wellness in adolescents or young adults? And then it says, okay, here's some different validated measures to be aware of. And it lists them out for me, as well as what they measure, notes if they're validated, that kind of thing. And whether they're, for example, related to anxiety, depression, mental wellness, and so on and so forth. And then it asks, okay, well, let me know if you want tools that are freely available, short form, or validated in specific populations. And I say, yes, I want validated measures for Canadian teenagers. And then it lists them here. So again, this is stuff that you will need to go and learn more about. So you will need to see, okay, well, is this a specific measure that I would want to use? How would I go about, or, that I'd want to search for? But again, it's just a jumping off point as opposed to you having to read 30 articles to explore what are the different measures that are used. You can kind of get a summary and then go take a closer look to see what terms might be out there for you to use. So again, I use large language models to explore topics that are new to me and to help me, explore different parts of the topic and to clean up what I call my syntax. Do not use large language models like ChatGPT to tell you subject terms. So we talked about mesh or M-tree terms. Those are those standard controlled vocabulary. They are large language models are still just making them up. So don't use them for that. They're not great at that. They're great at those keywords where they're just coming up with any words. It's really good for that, but not for subject terms yet. There is also, these tools can also be used to do translation of searches. Janice talked about that a little bit last week. So if you have a search in one database like Medline, how do you translate it into a different one? This was the other tool that I was going to talk about from Polyglot, or from Terra, called Polyglot. And you can see this topic is not related to the TikTok one, but what I've done here is I have pasted in a search that I built that was looking at AI tools for older adults who were using them for doing athletics. So I built this long search. You can see how long it is. And then if you scroll down, you can see that what it does is it translates parts of it for different databases. So if I want to then see what does it look like in Cochrane or in Scopus, it changes the syntax for me for my keyword searches. So that's out there as a tool to help you when you are doing your systematic search. These tools, excuse me, can also be helpful for the deduplication process. So Covidence, which we have a license to at the U of M, if you take all your references from different databases, put them into Covidence, it will get rid of the duplicates. You still want to do a little bit of oversight, but it's gotten much better to help improve that, which was a very time-consuming and very boring task that I had to do in the past, and now it's automated for me. So consider that. And again, I've listed some helpful other ones here on the right-hand side. Pardon me, on the bottom. Okay, and then, yes, sorry, screenshots. Oh, and I wanted to draw your attention to, so there are different, you probably, maybe you're aware of them. There are some different tools that are out there that help you with the lit review process. So for example, Elicit, Undermined, Cite AI, they all say that they can help with the literature review process. So I'm not disputing they can help with the literature review process. They are not designed yet to help with or to really do a good job at the systematic review process, right? Where you have to find everything. So this one article from just a few months ago looked at some of the big ones out there and figured out how many of the top papers it was finding. And you can see these numbers. They had 20 papers that they wanted to find. Each of these tools, the highest one was Elicit or Copilot, which found 7 out of 20. Some of the tools like Claude only found 0. You can say they even wrote all the references given were fake. They aren't actual references. So these tools that you might hear about, they are not equipped to do systematic review searching. So don't use them for that. Okay. So let's talk screening. So I would say screening is probably one of the tasks of a systematic review process where AI, specifically machine learning, can really help. So estimates for how long it takes to screen a single article is about 1 to 2 minutes. So if you think of a review, if you end up with 3,500 articles, it will take you 175 hours to screen them because you have to have 2 people screening, right? That's a huge chunk of time. But what these tools have developed are ways to speed up the screening process, and it can just reduce it in different ways. And there's different tools to kind of improve the screening process in different ways. But you'll see here, again, I've listed out a whole slew of them. I tend to use Covidence again because the U of M has a license to it and I find it a really high quality one, so you might as well use it while you're here. And just to kind of show you what it does. So what happens is as you are screening, as you go through your kind of, and are either going to include or exclude. It's doing kind of machine learning, and it's understanding, it's recognizing which ones you are finding more helpful, and then it pushes those ones up to the top of the list for you to screen next. So it moves the more relevant ones up to the top first. So what that means is if you have multiple people screening, the articles that you're going to end up including move through the whole screening process faster. So it kind of gets things to the end sooner, so people can start doing extraction and analysis a little bit sooner. Another one that's quite popular is called Abstracker. And this one is free. You don't need a license to it like we have here at the U of M. And there have been studies and they found that using Abstracker reduced, what did it say here? Reduced manual effort by up to 35% and had kind of significant time saving while also maintaining high accuracy in identifying the relevant studies. So what you'll see is, there's lots of studies that have been done on how these tools can improve or streamline the screening process. And I said 35, what the studies kind of show of between 10 to 50% in terms of reduction of workload for screening process. And the models, I won't get into kind of how the models work, but I think in terms of if you're considering using AI tools, using them for screening is one of the kind of most low risk ways to do it. And there are free tools out there, and I wouldn't worry as much as say using them in other parts of the review process, because there have been so many studies on the topic. And I link out to a bunch of them kind of down at the bottom. Or pardon me, at the end. And this is a screenshot from Abstracker. It is the old interface. I like it because it's more colorful. The new interface is not as colorful, but you can see what it does is as you are screening them, it is identifying kind of key parts of your topic and using colors to help you identify more easily identify whether something should be included or excluded. And then it learns from your choices as you go. So you have to screen kind of enough that it is learning from you before you can, before it starts kind of doing it, putting its process into place, essentially. And then I list, because again, so many screening tools, I listed some other ones. So Abstracker I listed here again for some reason, but Covidence and Abstracker, they use machine learning to move what it thinks based on what you've indicated in the more relevant articles up to the top of your screening ones. So that's one way to do it. Some of these other ones like doctor, I don't know, they do it differently. You can use much larger data sets and it's almost doing screening. There's still human oversight, but it is automating a lot more of the process than say some of these other tools. So depending on how many articles there might be out there, and depending on your own kind of computer savvy, you might want to explore using one of these tools. And I included just a link to an article about this particular image shows some of the different screening tools that are out there, how to access it, and some of the articles that specifically talk about how it does, if there are articles. So there's a lot on using it for screening. Okay, so in terms of how to assess the quality. So once you have identified the articles, but you want to assess, basically do a critical appraisal of the articles that you're going to include. And this is more systematic reviews than scoping reviews. Scoping reviews, you don't always have it, but systematic reviews, you often have to include a kind of appraisal of your included studies. So in terms of AI tools, I would say the tools, they can help, but all of the research done indicates that they are not yet in the place where they can replace humans, essentially, and your own knowledge in terms of assessing the quality. So they've done some studies and they've compared them if you use some of these tools versus how researchers would have done it. And you'll see kind of varying levels of agreement. So in some of them, up to between 41 and 71% agreement. So what that means is what this graph is showing on the left. So this is what a large language model thought about the quality versus what the clinical kind of experts thought about the quality. And you can see, for example, Claude thought that very few of the studies were basically were methodologically poor. The authors, the actual humans, thought there were many more. And that's what this very complicated for looking kind of figure is showing you. You don't have a straight agreement between tool and human yet. Other ones have shown some up to 80% agreement, but it's just not, I would say, I would exercise a lot of caution if you want to use these tools to assess quality. What is an option is whether, because often what can happen is your quality assessment, your critical appraisal, you have to have two people do it. So could you use these tools essentially as your second reviewer? So you have a human who goes through and does an assessment of quality, and then you have a tool that goes through and does a second assessment. So that can kind of, again, streamline the process, and then you can compare what you're seeing, and it's more easy to pull out differences and take a closer look at why, say, the human might say one thing and the tool might say another in terms of quality. Okay, the next step is data extraction. So along with screening, I would say this is the area with the most potential and where there has been the most research on how AI can be used to automate or streamline the process. There's been a lot of different research on it. Probably the most common one that is used are systematic reviews that use randomized controlled trials. So it's partly because they are one of the most popular forms of interventional systematic reviews, but also the data, how it's kind of presented, is a little bit more structured, which means that these tools, it's easier to extract the data. So what it does, if you are doing extraction in a systematic review of RCTs, what you're frequently pulling out is a lot of like PICO information. So who are the patients? What was the intervention? What were the outcomes, right? And so what these tools help with is, again, automating and pulling out that information if you have the article. And as I said, RCTs are the most common, but there are some tools for extraction of qualitative data as well. And the studies that have been done, the accuracy varies between 80 to 96% when compared to kind of standard or standard methodology or from humans. And what I tried to show again, so this is from an article here on different data extraction methods for systematic reviews. So you can see here what they've shown in this pie chart is they've looked at all the different studies that are out there that have used AI for data extraction, and the majority, this one on the left is showing the majority are used for randomized control trials. But again, there are other study types, case controls, diagnostic tests, cohort studies, where there is research looking at how AI can improve data extraction. And then here on the right, this right-hand pie chart really shows what kind of data these tools extract. So for example, are they extracting the grant number, or that's less likely. More, it's extracting data related to who is the patient or the problem or the population, what is the outcome being studied. You can extract gender, what are the other ones I have here? Age, those kinds of things. So again, this is one of those very repetitive things. If you're looking at dozens or hundreds of studies and you want to quickly pull out, well, who are the patients being studied? And again, because data extraction is one of the tools most studied, I wanted to highlight a paper here. There is a constant, what's called a living systematic review that is being done at all times to keep up to date on new data extraction methods for systematic reviews using automation. My caveat is extraction isn't something that librarians typically get involved in, so I can't really speak authoritatively to these tools, but if you do this kind of work regularly, just know that there's a lot of research into the area, and I would encourage you to kind of seek that out to decide whether you want to use it yourself. Okay, analysis, step number 8. So there are a lot of different tools out there, more so that can help with when you're doing a meta-analysis. So in the interest of time, I won't click through to here, but this lists to the systematic review toolkit. Actually, maybe I'll just show you. Sorry, I will show you. So if you look here and I go to, okay, I want to do a systematic review. I want to look at tools for systematic reviews, and I want tools related to synthesis. And then I hit search. You can see there are 77 different tools out there that can kind of help me with meta-analysis and potentially other different forms of analysis. So lots of different ways to help you with analysis. There's also ones that can help you if you flip over to, say, scoping, you want to do a qualitative synthesis. So again, to help you with that. So there are tips, or pardon me, there are kind of classic ones like in vivo. In vivo even uses some AI built into it now, but take a look if you are thinking about doing analysis. It is also not something typically done by librarians, so I can't speak to the quality yet, but there are some studies out there, not tons, but a little bit. But what some 2024 study found is that analysis is probably one of the areas of the systematic review or scoping review that has the least amount of formal analysis or validation of these tools. So use them with a little bit of caution, and you definitely need expertise before using any of these tools. They're not to be used if you don't really kind of know, for example, how coding or how meta-analyses work. Okay, dissemination. So if once you've written it, you're ready to disseminate your results.
We can go to the slides, Mê-Linh, please.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Janice.
Thank you.
There we go, dissemination. There are a lot of tools out there to help you determine which journals to publish in. Some of which kind of use parts of AI to kind of help them make suggestions based on some text analysis. You can also use, some people, I don't want to get too much into this, might use large language models to ensure that their writing is clear. So if you've written up, say, your abstract, you put it in there to be like, is this clear? Am I getting across my point? What issues might I want to address? People can use that. Again, not writing for you, but giving you feedback, almost like a peer reviewer on your writing. And we have this guide called How to Publish in the Health Sciences, and it links out to some tools that can be used to help you determine where you want to publish your results. So two that I like, one is called Jane, one is called The Dance. And what you do essentially is you input, once you've written your paper, where you got your title and your abstract, you put them in here, and then it will make suggestions for what journals you might want to publish in. So sometimes, again, if you're a grad student, you're getting familiar with your area, this can be really helpful as a way to explore different places you might want to publish. And finally, these ones didn't really fit in my stages, but I wanted to point them out to you, is that AI tools can be really helpful with translation. So I, again, do a lot of reviews, and sometimes people, they used to say more, I don't want non-English because we don't read anything but English, for example. But I would say the quality of translation tools that allows you now to translate the full text of articles has improved so much that I always tell researchers to include all languages and use these online translation tools. If they find that an article they want to include based on its abstract, they can do a full text analysis using Google Translate or DeepL. And once you have, another common tool used is Research Rabbit. So once you have identified which articles you want to include in your study, you can enter them into a tool like Research Rabbit and just make sure that there aren't any additional articles that have cited the same studies as you, that you basically, if you've missed anything. So citation chaining is a common step in the systematic review or scoping review process, and there are tools like Research Rabbit that can help. And there's other ones as well, and we have a whole workshop just on doing citation chaining. So just to wrap up, what's next? There is a whole group that is looking at how to use AI responsibly in the evidence synthesis process. They have a draft of their kind of framework up, but it's still going through revisions. But it's really about how to, again, use large language models and machine learning kind of ethically and promoting best practices, that kind of thing. So people are really thinking about this topic and how to do it properly and ethically. So if you're interested in it, you can go and kind of read more about what kind of things you want to be considering.